David and Clara's love story started like a fairy tale. They met in college, a whirlwind romance that felt like it was plucked from the pages of a novel. David was the steady, ambitious one, his eyes always fixed on the future. Clara was the free spirit, a whirlwind of laughter and creativity who brought color into his black and white world. They were inseparable, the kind of couple everyone envied. After graduation, they married in a small, beautiful ceremony, promising to build a life together, brick by brick. David took his vows seriously. He landed a job at a construction firm, and from day one, he was the hardest worker on any site. He wasn't just laying bricks, he was laying the foundation for their future. He dreamed of a house with a white picket fence, a yard for their future kids to play in, and a life where Clara would never have to worry about a single thing. He saw the long hours and the physically demanding labor not as a burden, but as a stepping stone to that dream. Clara, on the other hand, found the transition to married life a bit more challenging. The structure and routine felt confining. She'd taken a part-time job at a local art gallery, but it didn't ignite the passion she'd hoped for. While David was out from sunrise to sunset, sometimes even later, the silence in their small apartment grew louder each day. She felt a growing distance, a sense of being left behind in David's relentless pursuit of their shared future. To fill the void, Clara started going out with some old friends from college, reconnecting with a part of her life that felt more spontaneous and exciting. It was on one of these nights out that she met Julian. He was a musician, charismatic and carefree, with a way of looking at her that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. He listened to her talk about her dreams of painting, her feelings of being stuck, and he didn't offer solutions or plans. He just listened. It started innocently enough. Coffee dates while David was at work, texts throughout the day. Julian made her laugh. He reminded her of the person she was before mortgages and responsibilities. She told herself it was just a friendship, a harmless escape from the loneliness. She reasoned that David was so focused on work, he wouldn't even notice. He was too tired when he got home to have deep conversations, usually just managing a quick dinner before falling into an exhausted sleep. Meanwhile, David was pushing himself to the limit. His boss had offered him a promotion to foreman, but it meant taking on more responsibility and even longer hours, including weekends. He saw it as the final push they needed to save up for a down payment on their dream house. He talked to Clara about it, his face lit up with excitement. "Just one more year of this, honey," he'd said, holding her hands. "One more year, and we'll have our house. Everything will be perfect." Clara smiled and nodded, a knot of guilt tightening in her stomach. That same afternoon, she had plans to meet Julian. She told David she was going to a yoga class, a new lie that came a little too easily. The yoga classes became more frequent. The innocent coffee dates with Julian had escalated. A lingering touch, a shared look that lasted a second too long. One evening, after a particularly emotional conversation about her stagnant life, Julian leaned in and kissed her. In that moment, Clara didn't pull away. She crossed a line she swore she never would. The double life began to take its toll. Clara became an expert at covering her tracks. She'd shower the moment she got home, deleting call logs and text messages, fabricating stories about her day. The guilt was a constant companion, but it was overshadowed by the thrill and the emotional connection she felt with Julian. With him, she felt alive. With David, she felt like a fraud. David, bless his heart, was completely oblivious. He mistook her mood swings and distraction for stress. "You're working too hard at that gallery," he'd say, rubbing her shoulders. "Maybe you should cut back." He'd bring her flowers, trying to reconnect, but his gestures of love only made her feel worse. He was building their future, while she was systematically tearing it down. The turning point came on their 5th wedding anniversary. David had been planning a surprise for months. He'd worked every ounce of overtime he could get, cashing in favors to get the weekend off. He booked a beautiful cabin in the mountains, the same place he had proposed. He'd even secretly bought her a delicate silver bracelet she'd admired months ago. He came home early that Friday, bursting with excitement, a bouquet of her favorite lilies in hand. He opened the door to their apartment, calling her name. "Clara! Honey, I'm home! Pack a bag, we're going away." The silence that greeted him was unsettling. He walked into the living room and froze. On the coffee table was a half-empty bottle of wine, 2 glasses, and a man's leather jacket slung over the armchair. It wasn't his. His heart began to hammer against his ribs. He slowly walked toward their bedroom, a cold dread washing over him. The door was slightly ajar, and he could hear hushed voices, followed by a soft laugh that wasn't his. Pushing the door open, his world shattered. There was Clara, with a man he'd never seen before. The lilies slipped from his hand, scattering across the floor. The shock on Clara's face was quickly replaced by panic. Julian, the other man, scrambled for his clothes, avoiding David's gaze. David just stood there, speechless, the image burning itself into his memory. The man who worked double shifts, who carried heavy loads and endured scorching heat and freezing cold. All for her, for them. In that instant, the weight he felt was heavier than any bag of concrete. It was the weight of betrayal. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. A strange, chilling calm washed over him. He just turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving the scattered flowers and the ruins of their 5-year marriage behind him. He walked for hours, the city lights a blur through his tear-filled eyes. The dream house, the white picket fence, the future he'd so carefully built. It all crumbled into dust. In the days that followed, the story unraveled. Clara, through a series of guilt-ridden texts and voicemails, confessed everything. The loneliness, the friendship with Julian, the affair that had been going on for months. She begged for forgiveness, saying it was a mistake, that she loved him. But her words were meaningless. Trust, once broken so completely, can't be glued back together. David was a ghost of his former self. He moved out, staying on a friend's couch. He quit the foreman promotion. The fire that had driven him was gone, replaced by a hollow emptiness. The future he'd worked so hard for was a future for one. But David was a builder. It's what he did. After weeks of drifting in a fog of grief and anger, something inside him began to stir. He realized he had been building a future for someone else, for a dream that wasn't entirely his. Now, he had to build a future for himself. He started small. He went back to work, but this time, he set boundaries. No more double shifts unless he wanted them. He started therapy, working through the betrayal and rebuilding his sense of self-worth. He realized his identity had become completely wrapped up in being Clara's husband and provider. He'd forgotten who David was. Slowly, brick by brick, he began to build a new life. He used the money he'd saved not for a family home, but for a small plot of land for himself. He spent his weekends designing and building a small modern cabin, his own space, his own sanctuary. The physical labor was healing. Every nail hammered a release of anger. Every wall raised a new boundary for his own heart. Clara's life also changed. Her relationship with Julian fizzled out quickly once the thrill of secrecy was gone. She was left alone, facing the consequences of her choices. She had to learn to stand on her own, to confront the emptiness she had tried so hard to fill with another person. Months later, David finished his cabin. It wasn't the big family house he'd once dreamed of, but it was his. Standing on the porch, looking out at the woods, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. He had lost a wife, but he had found himself. The scars of betrayal were still there, but they were a reminder of his own strength. He had built a life from the wreckage, and this time the foundation was solid, built not for a dream of us, but for the reality of me. And that was a future worth working for.